is Moments of Truth with Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker. Today, I am joined again by Michael Buccellato, Enterprise Customer Success Manager at LawGeex. Michael, welcome back. Tell us a bit about what you're doing these days.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks so much for having me. I've been in customer success for just under 5 years, and obviously the role has evolved so much since when I first started Oracle Marketing Cloud. So I've been at a couple startups and currently working with enterprise type clients at a legal tech company, LawGeex, and happy to talk to you today about deploying empathy and building trust.
Great. Thanks for that, Michael. I appreciate it. And it's great to have you back. So yeah, let's jump into our topic for today, empathy and its role in customer success.
For sure. Well, when you think about customer success, it really goes hand in hand with empathy. So considering it's our responsibility to deliver value to clients, how are we going to do that if we don't understand, one, what value means to them, and what kind of emotions are the product of their challenges?
So really reading the customer's emotions is really important.
Yeah, and I think if you think about today's environment and climate, it's so important to really understand your customers. I mean, there's so much change happening within their organizations, and I imagine they're feeling some type of way about it, whether it's good or bad. And when you think about kind of breaking down those walls and building trust with customers, empathy is a key component of that.
And I think it plays a part in whatever aspect of the customer journey they're in, whatever situation you're in with them, whether you're driving value, whether you're onboarding, whether you're trying to re-engage a disengaged customer, trying to understand their perspective. And we talk about how it's really important to understand the customer's perspective. That's standing in their shoes. That's empathy.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's applicable anywhere in the customer journey, and some of the things that I'll talk about today, I think, emphasize early on, how do you build trust early on. Sometimes harder down the path in a more later stage relationship if you haven't kind of built the blocks earlier on to get over that hump. So I want to focus on early on, how do you build trust and some of the tactics that you can deploy to help you get there.
I think there's some folks misinterpret the term empathy. They when they think of empathy, they also think of sympathy, and there's a difference there.
Absolutely. I think it's a common misconception, and let's kind of quickly separate the two. So sympathy is, you can recognize what someone else is going through and you have a sense of pity or sorrow. Empathy takes it a step deeper, and it's when you can actually put yourself in somebody else's shoes and feel what they feel.
Yeah, so actually it's almost like sympathy is I like the way you put that, is that you take it a step deeper. I've looked at it in a different way, that empathy is putting yourself in their shoes, and sympathy is attaching that emotion to it. But I could also see how you could be sympathetic yet not really understand that person's perspective. You're just understanding the situation they're in.
Right, exactly. And empathy, you can relate to that person. And I think as humans, we all want to be accepted and understood. So that's something that when you deploy empathy, you're exhibiting that. You're exhibiting, you feel what they feel, and you're accepting them for that.
So when you talk about deploying empathy, how do you deploy empathy? Well, you got any strategies, any best practices for how to actually deploy empathy?
Yeah, I think even taking a step back, imagine sifting through a job listing, right? What are some of the common phrases you'll see in terms of requirements for a CSM? The ability to become a trusted advisor, right? And I think how you do that early on is by deploying empathy, like we said. So for me, what changed the game was reading Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yeah, great book. Great book by Chris Voss.
The former lead FBI negotiator. And frankly, I became obsessed with the ideas. So for the past 6 months, I've really worked to apply those learnings in my role as an enterprise customer success manager. So what we alluded to before was all humans want to be accepted and understood, right? And in order to have influence on someone, you need to demonstrate that you can feel what they feel. So there's obviously, while you're doing that, this is really going to help uncover any sort of obstacles along the path of you gaining trust with them. So for me, the first place that I start is by putting customers in a positive frame of mind. So if you can picture any sort of customer engagement, whether it's a call or a meeting, there's always some level of small talk that happens. For me, I like to take it a step further than a how are you. So I would encourage you to do research on your customers. What have they posted to LinkedIn, Twitter, and try and find some sort of common ground outside of the professional arena. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I think curiosity is always super important in all aspects of life, and no different here. So for me, I think this is a really important rapport building exercise, and it allows you to build trust earlier on and be perceived as a human. So, a quote that I took from the book was, when people are in a positive frame of mind, they're more likely to think quickly and to collaborate and to problem solve. So that really hit home for me. And, it makes sense in any sort of situation.
And if you had the opportunity you've had the opportunity to apply some of these principles from Chris's book in your work?
Absolutely. So I think for a recent example, in terms of putting someone in a positive frame of mind, I was on a kickoff meeting with a customer, and the first question I asked them is, what's one place they'd like to travel once the dust settles? And heard everything from Hawaii to hiking Machu Picchu to Iceland. And we had like a quick laugh before we dove into the business presentation. So I think, that's something to consider. It's really easy to do. Two of the other tactics that are super important for driving empathy are mirrors and labels. Both of these are incredible ways to not only bond with your customers, but they're great information gathering tactics.
So talk to us about those tactics, mirrors and labels. I know about mirroring and labeling, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So mirrors are simply repeating 1 to 3 words, the last 1 to 3 words that somebody says. So if you think
The last 1 to 3.
yes, if you think about your customers, not many of mine are going to give you a full essay answer. You got to dig deeper. So you might ask your customer, Sally, let's call her, what are some of your priorities and initiatives for the upcoming quarter? And they might respond, well, our team is working on a few strategic projects. How you would deploy a mirror here is you'd say strategic projects.
Right.
And I'd be willing to bet that they'd go on and tell you specifically what those strategic projects are.
Yeah.
So in this example, it's a really easy way to demonstrate not only that you're listening,
Right.
but also
it's an active listening technique
them.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're also encouraging them to share more information without you saying, what do you mean?
Right. Right. Yeah. You're listening and you're expressing interest. And if you're sitting across from them and you're on a video call like this, you're like you even leaning in.
Yeah.
Strategic projects.
And the inquisitive tone is super important as well. Tone and tonality is, it's really how you're effectively delivering that message. So that's something I would consider as well. And if you're using any sort of recording software like Gong, or you have Zoom recordings, I would encourage you to re-listen to your calls and hear what your tone is. It's really, really impactful in terms of getting your message across.
Okay, so that's mirroring. And what about labeling?
So labeling essentially is a way for you to acknowledge the emotion behind what somebody is saying. And it requires you to be fully attentive and aware of what your customers are not only saying, but what they're feeling. And it sounds pretty simple, but it's pretty difficult. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is prepare for these conversations. So to dive a bit more deeper into what labels are, the key component labels are using the words "it seems like," "it feels like," or "it sounds like," followed by you trying to identify what the underlying emotion is. And your goal here is for one to diffuse the negative. So if they tell you something that's more negative in nature, you want to call it out and diffuse it, right? You don't want to avoid it.
It sounds like that frustrates you. It sounds like what I'm hearing is you're frustrated with that.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then on the other end of it is reinforcing the positive. So something like, it sounds like you guys are seeing a tremendous amount of value out of this. Um, what I mentioned before is, when you sit down and you think about the goals of your meeting, I would prepare questions and some labels so what you might anticipate those responses are going to be. Um, you really want to avoid at all costs using the words "I understand,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a really lazy way of demonstrating empathy,
Yeah.
often followed by a "but,"
Yeah.
in which someone's going to try and get their point across. So it's really kind of deteriorating all the quote unquote listening that they just did.
Yeah.
And it's a way for them to push their own agenda on you.
Yeah. These are core aspects of active listening. So, which I know is a big part of Chris's strategy. Right?
Absolutely.
In order to influence and negotiate with somebody, you really need to be a good active listener. And then also the the ABC, the always be curious. It's not always be closing like they say in Glengarry Glen Ross. It's always
Yep.
be curious, right? And so I love the concepts, definitely.
Yeah, so there's 6 stages of active listening that Chris talks about. One being effective pauses. So pauses are huge. Two are encouragers. So yup, mm-hmm. And then 3 and 4 are labels and mirrors.
Yep.
And then there's paraphrasing and there's summarizing,
Yep.
which they take time to develop those skills, and it really requires your full attention and focus. When you're thinking about listening, all the thoughts that are going through your mind, it's difficult. It takes time to develop the skill set. So um, pertaining to labels, going back to that, I wanted to give you an example. So if we're thinking about the example I used before for mirrors, you use a mirror and you find out that the strategic projects that Sally and the team have been tasked with are doing a budget analysis. And she anticipates that this is going to impact headcount on her team. So you might say something like, it sounds like your team is under a lot of pressure from leadership, and that you might be caught in a situation where you're having to do more with less. So I think this is, a good opportunity for you to not only diffuse the negative, but you're displaying that you understand what they're going through, and you've opened up for them to validate what you said, which is another key component.
Yeah, that validation, right? Because that gives the speaker an opportunity to agree with you or to correct you, but more importantly, you're having a conversation, right? And that person is going to you've demonstrated that you're listening and that you understand, and you not just understand the words they're saying, but you understand the emotion behind that. You are opening up that that opportunity to really connect with somebody, and they're going to open up even more with you.
Absolutely. And it goes a really long way. And you really need to break down barriers with customers. And we get stuck in the world of, we are a vendor, right? And they have many vendors that they're working with. So to really become a trusted advisor, you need to connect with them on that level. And one of the important things to think about is empathy and trust takes time. You know, you I might be going out on a limb here, but you probably aren't going to be invited to attend Sally's weddings after a few mirrors and labels. It takes time.
Yeah. Yes, but your customer may not remember everything that you say to them, but they will remember how you made them feel. And if
Absolutely.
they feel like you get it and you understand it, that goes a long way. It goes a long way for achieving that trusted advisor relationship.
Yeah, and outside of building the relationship, trust, and connectiveness, it's such an incredible tool for gathering information. So if you think about asking people questions, people don't like to be interrogated. They don't like to be asked questions. So by using labels and mirrors, you're actually gathering information and moving a lot closer to uncovering what's their motivation. So that's something else I really want to emphasize, that it's not only a way for you to build relationships, it's an amazing information gathering tool.
Well, God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. So we listen more than we speak. And we listen more than we speak. It's amazing what we can do, not just to your point, to the relationships, but what we can learn and what we can understand.
100%. And I think it applies to not only your professional life, especially within customer success, but you can apply all of these concepts to your personal life. So it's across the board. I think that's really what resonated with me the most as I started to read the book, is how simple these things are, but hard to actually apply to your life. They sound very simple, but you got to get your reps in. I would encourage you. He always talks about getting reps in low stake negotiations, and whether that's you're on the phone with a customer support agent, or you're talking to your friend. Try and drop a mirror in there. Try and drop a label in there. That's where you kind of get your start and get your reps in.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's great. I love it. It's great advice. It's one of the first business books I ever read was Active Listening. It's just the cornerstone for good relationship building, good communications, good negotiations, so many fronts. And once again, to your point, both in business and in your personal life. So it's great. It's great point. And empathy, once again, is so important. It's such an important aspect of customer success. I regularly talk with my students, my clients, about how important it is. So it's a great topic. I appreciate you spending some time with me today, and I'm sure people will enjoy this conversation. So, stay safe and healthy, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure, Andrew. I hope that folks can go out there and do a little bit of research and kind of take on some of the tactics that we talked today about.